Have you ever paused to wonder, really wonder, if the Bible might be pointing toward a quiet, humble nation in Southeast Asia? A place often overlooked on the world stage, yet rich in spirit, soaked in struggle, and burning with something powerful beneath the surface. I'm talking about the Philippines. This is not just a story about history or religion. This is a search for something deeper, a mystery. Could it be that this archipelago of more than 7,000 islands, tossed by typhoons, shaped by colonizers, marked by resilience, is part of a much bigger design? Could it be that the Filipino story is not just a tale of survival, but of prophecy in motion? We're not just asking, is this in the Bible? We're asking something bolder. What if this is just the beginning? Part 1. The Chosen Land, a nation forged by storms. The Philippines is more than a destination on a map. It's more than its beaches, more than the chaos of its traffic or the fury of its storms. It is a paradox, a land where deep suffering meets unshakable faith, where smiles shine through disaster and prayers rise louder than the winds. From the very beginning, the Philippines has been a crossroads of cultures. Chinese merchants, Japanese traders, Spanish conquerors, American soldiers. It's a land that's been invaded, ruled, restructured, and rebranded again and again. But here's the miracle. Nothing was erased. Instead, everything was woven in, like colors on a tapestry, creating something unmistakably Filipino. Unique, unbreakable. And maybe that's the first sign. This is not a country that just endures. It transforms. It absorbs pain and somehow produces grace. It takes the weight of history and shapes it into something sacred. There are ancient legends of a land that would rise from the sea, weather great tribulation, and shine like a beacon in the darkness. To some, those sound like fairy tales. But what if they were always meant to be clues, prophetic whispers, warnings and promises rolled into one? The Philippines has lived through everything: colonization, revolutions, war, earthquakes, dictatorships, typhoons, economic collapse. And every time it falls somehow, it gets back up. Bruised maybe, changed definitely, but never broken, never lost. And here's where things start to echo the Bible. Throughout Scripture, God doesn't choose the obvious. He chooses the overlooked. Israel was a tiny nation, enslaved, scattered, and yet it became the root of his covenant. David was a shepherd boy, forgotten by his own family, and he became a king. Again and again, God chooses what the world ignores, and then he transforms it. So maybe the question isn't, why does the Philippines suffer? Maybe the real question is, what is it being prepared for? Part 2. A nation on the edge of prophecy. Some countries rise through strategy, others through power or wealth. But every once in a while, one rises through something else, something you can't quite name: fate, destiny, divine timing. Could the Philippines be one of those rare nations, a place not just shaped by history, but woven into prophecy? The Bible, especially in books like Isaiah, Revelation, and Matthew, is rich with images of darkness turning to light, of nations emerging from fire and flood, of people rising after tribulation. These scriptures weren't written with specific modern nations in mind, but prophecy is rarely straightforward. It's layered, symbolic, timeless. Take Isaiah 60. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. For centuries, people have taken that as a spiritual awakening. But listen to it again. Doesn't it also sound like a nation stepping into clarity after chaos? A people who have been through the fire and are finally stepping into their purpose? Consider where the Philippines sits, right on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's not just poetic. This is one of the most disaster-prone regions on Earth. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, super typhoons. It's as if the land itself is forged in fire and water. And yet, always in the aftermath, what do we see? We see life. We see people helping each other, rebuilding homes, singing in shelters, praying in the ruins. We see faith louder than fear. Maybe that's what sets this nation apart. Not that it avoids the storm, but that it learns to dance in the rain, to rise from the wreckage, To believe when everything seems lost. Could it be that the Philippines is not a nation being punished, but one being refined? Maybe, just maybe, this is not a land left behind, but one being prepared to lead. Part 3. The response that speaks communities rebuilding. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers becoming family. Not because anyone told them to, but because something inside them says this is who we are. And maybe that's where the prophecy speaks the loudest. Not in the disasters, not in the data, but in the response. It's easy to stand when everything is going well. But when the winds tear your roof away, when the floodwaters rise, when the ground splits open, and still you choose hope, choose kindness, choose to rebuild, that's not just resilience, that's sacred. Jesus never promised a smooth journey. In fact, he warned us, there will be wars, earthquakes, famines, but then he said something strange. These are only the beginning of birth pains. Not the end, the beginning. So what if everything the Philippines has endured, the storms, the heartbreaks, the starts and restarts, what if it's not a punishment? What if it's preparation? What if this country isn't being broken down, but built up, shaped, positioned, a nation standing at the threshold of something far bigger than itself? A people who may not even realize they're walking through a story that was written long before they were born. And maybe, just maybe, the world hasn't seen what the Philippines is really capable of yet. Part 4. The rise of a new kind of leader. Every generation gets tested, and every generation hears the same question whispered in the silence. Who will rise when everything starts to fall apart? In the Bible, those moments of collapse were often the setting for the rise of extraordinary leaders. Not perfect, not polished, but chosen. Moses wasn't a statesman. He stuttered and ran from his past. David wasn't a warrior. He was forgotten in a field. Esther wasn't born royal. She was a quiet girl caught in a dangerous place. But when the moment came, they didn't shrink back. They stepped in. So what about today? What about the Philippines? In times of corruption, confusion, and crisis, people often wait for a hero, a president, a general, a strong man. But maybe we're looking in the wrong places. What if the next great leader isn't someone we're waiting for, but someone we're overlooking? The Bible describes a future leader in Isaiah 32, one who will reign in righteousness, who will rule with justice, not someone who grabs power, but someone who restores it, not someone who demands loyalty, but earns it through wisdom, humility, and compassion. In the Philippines, leadership has always been complicated. For every leap forward, there's been a painful step back. Progress followed by betrayal. Hope followed by disappointment. But what if that cycle is ending? What if the trials of the past weren't just tearing things down, but making space for something new? Maybe the next Moses won't come from a palace. Maybe she's in a classroom in Cebu. Maybe he's working the rice fields in Mindoro. Maybe they're writing code in a startup in Manila. Because leadership today might not look like command. It might look like character, not control, but courage. The truth is, God has never needed a crown to change the world. He just needs people who are willing to answer the call when it comes. And maybe right now, all across these islands, there are young people waking up, not to chase power, but to carry purpose, to lead not with fear, but with faith. So when we ask, who will lead the Philippines into its next chapter? Maybe the answer isn't one person. Maybe it's all of us. Part 5. A new era. Awakens. Technology, transformation, and the Filipino spirit. When we think of prophecy, we often picture ancient scrolls, burning bushes, thunder from the skies. But what if some prophecies don't sound like miracles? What if they sound like microchips? What if the future isn't waiting in the heavens, but being quietly built by ordinary people here on Earth? Coders, creators, scientists, students. Right now in the Philippines, a quiet revolution is happening. Tech startups are rising in the cities. Renewable energy is being tested on remote islands. AI is finding its way into hospitals and classrooms. Innovation is no longer a dream. It's becoming a daily reality. This is no longer the nation the world once overlooked. This is a nation reaching for something new. Not just survival, but transformation. And maybe that's not an accident. In the book of Daniel, there's a mysterious line. In the time of the end, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. For centuries, no one knew what it meant. But today, we live in a world where knowledge doubles every few years, where Filipinos are among the most connected, most creative digital citizens on the planet. Could that be more than coincidence? But here's the key. Technology alone won't change a nation. It's not the tools, it's the spirit behind them. The Filipino spirit, that blend of joy, grit, faith, and community, that is what gives the future its shape. That is what breathes life into machines and purpose into progress. So maybe the new era isn't coming. Maybe it's already here, rising quietly, island by island, dream by dream. Part 4. Spirit Empowered by Innovation. There's something incredible about the Filipino spirit. It doesn't just survive, it sings through the storm. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It creates joy in the rubble, resilience, creativity, a kind of defiant hope that refuses to be silenced. Take a typhoon. It can flatten entire villages, tear through homes, knock out power, food, water, for days, even weeks. And yet, within hours, you'll hear laughter echo through the streets. You'll see neighbors lifting wood and bricks together, people sharing food, charging phones on shared generators, some singing karaoke, others praying. That's not just a coping mechanism. That's culture. That's identity. That's something sacred. Now imagine that same spirit, not just enduring, but empowered. What happens when compassion meets code? When faith meets innovation? When hands once used to rebuild are now also building the future? Across the archipelago, something is stirring. Filipino creators, thinkers, and builders are stepping into the digital age, not as followers, but as innovators. Startups are growing, renewable energy is spreading, young minds are dreaming, designing, and disrupting. And maybe, just maybe, that's no accident. Maybe this is the next chapter in the prophecy. Not just recovery, but revelation. Not just rising after storms, but rising to lead. Because in the Bible, transformation rarely waited for peace. It happened in the chaos, in the middle of deserts, prisons, storms, and silence. That's when destiny showed up. So maybe what we're seeing isn't just a country going digital. Maybe it's a nation stepping into a divine rhythm, not defined anymore by what it lacks, but by what it can give. A light not just at the edge of the map, but at the center of something new. Part 5. Hope Beyond the Storm. The unfinished story of a nation. Every great story has a moment where all hope seems lost. When the skies are dark, when the storm is louder than the voice of reason, when everything breaks and no one knows what comes next. For the Philippines, that moment seems to come again and again. A cycle of storms, earthquakes, setbacks, divisions in politics, struggles in poverty, uncertainty on every level. But if you look closer, you'll see. The real story isn't in the collapse. It's in the comeback. It's in the mothers rebuilding homes with scrap wood and borrowed nails. It's in the kids walking miles to school because they still believe in tomorrow. It's in the communities that gather after every disaster, not with anger, but with food, with prayers, with songs. This kind of hope, it's not manufactured. It doesn't come from government budgets or news headlines. It comes from somewhere deeper. And maybe that's what the Bible has been trying to show us all along. Think of the stories. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years before stepping into their promise. Joseph was betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten, before becoming a deliverer. Even Jesus walked through suffering, silence, and death before resurrection. So why would it be different for a nation? Maybe the Philippines isn't falling behind. Maybe it's right on time, still being shaped, still being tested, but also still standing. And maybe that's the prophecy no one saw coming, that a land so often defined by storms would one day be remembered for healing, that from the very place where the winds were strongest, a new kind of light would shine, not just for Southeast Asia, not just for the faithful, but for a world longing to believe again. That hope is stronger than fear. That resilience is real. That purpose can rise from pain. The final chapter, or just the beginning. The story of the Philippines isn't over. Not even close. In fact, it may just be getting started. Because this journey we've walked through today, it's not just about one country. It's about something deeper. It's about meaning, calling, the idea that maybe storms aren't signs of failure. Maybe they're the fire that forges something greater. The Philippines has been through so much, and yet it rises, again and again. And maybe that's not just coincidence. Maybe that's calling. So if there's one message to carry with you, it's this. Prophecy isn't just about predicting the future. It's about preparing for it. And maybe, just maybe, what we're witnessing right now is the unfolding of something sacred, something ancient, something that was written long before we knew to look for it. So now we ask, is the Philippines simply surviving history, or is it being written into something older and far more meaningful? Let us know what you believe in the comments. Share your thoughts, your prayers, your hopes, because this conversation, this prophecy, isn't over. It's still unfolding. And the next chapter might just include you. So stay curious, stay hopeful, and never forget, sometimes the most powerful prophecies are the ones that haven't finished speaking yet.